The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and Tua T Fitness.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. This is the 100th episode edition. My name is Michael Shantz. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, of course, as always, your friend and mine, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hello, Tom.
Like sea monkeys. Parker Posey is the one ray of light in this pit of abject darkness that we're covering today.
Yes.
Happy 100th, everyone!
Ladies and gentlemen, we are today settling all accounts. Are we not, Tom? We are going back to the beginning for our 100th episode. And truly, this is the Superman edition. We're talking Superman Returns today, Tom.
Did you know this is our 6th Super verse movie that we've done? If you include watch-alongs.
Watch-alongs too, right?
Yeah. That's quite a record. That's 6 out of 100. No, 6 out of 110, let's say.
Right.
by the time this airs. So that's quite a significant portion dedicated to one franchise.
Yeah, I mean, that's yeah. It's almost, I mean, we're saying 110, but let's just say it's 100. That's 6%. 6% of all these shows are Superman related.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah, as am I. I have no quarrel.
So let's talk a little. Why didn't we do this when we did the Superman movies?
Well, I know that you would blame me.
I initially I did. I think I'm coming around, having watched this 2.5-hour movie. I'm starting to come around. It's longer than 2.5 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 2:34.
No, it's 2.5. It's 2:34. I was even questioning myself.
That's longer than 2.5.
I know, but I was even questioning myself that it was 2.5 hours, which is not a position you want to be in with a movie.
Well, my problem up front is like at an hour 40, you think you're heading into the final act of this movie, which you are, which you think should be 20 to 25 minutes, and it's an hour. Or just under. It's like 55 more minutes.
Yeah, he's falling through space for a good 10 minutes. Well, I mean, do you want to tell people about? So we covered the very first series we did.
We started this podcast on August 16th.
That's correct.
So we are just over a year. We are recording this. Well, we're recording this on August 19th.
Right. Yeah.
So not including the watch-along we just did a couple days ago.
Yeah.
We are right at the year mark, and this will be our 100th episode.
And if that timeline sounds complicated, we haven't even got into the movie yet.
Tell me about it. Well, I mean, should we wait on the movie? Do you want to reflect a little bit on?
I do, yeah. I think
in a year?
Well, I mean, the whole purpose of this one-off is as you say, to settle accounts and to, and I think from time to time we should look back and see where we might have missed something obvious, I guess. Because
you mean when you declared all of the Twilight movies as good?
No, I'm not talking about quality, okay? That is in the eye of the beholder. But objectively, this is a sequel that at the time, let's be fair, neither of us remembered was a sequel.
Correct.
We were both under the assumption...
I still kind of want to push back a little bit.
Me too. And you know, we'll go back to this. I'll just put this down here. I want to invent a term for this movie, which is rebooting continuity.
Right.
Because I think that's what this movie is. But we'll go back to that. And I remember you saying, I don't know if you've ever said this on mic before, but you said you started watching it, this movie, and then realized it was supposed to be a sequel.
Yes.
Like, as it unfolded. And so we both just conveniently forgot of its existence.
Not its existence, but its...
As a sequel.
Yes, its existence as a sequel.
Yeah. But you're right, there are problems within that categorization. I'm not gonna disagree with you there.
All right, but let's back off of that for a moment. What are your thoughts and feelings of our first year? And I mean, we're creating a bunch of shit at a prolific rate. We have 100 episodes of the podcast. How many watch-alongs have we done?
10? Well, when this comes out, which will be, what are we in, like?
October.
October? Okay, then we'll have 11, most likely.
All right.
11 watch-alongs because we started in November last year with the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Well, no one can say we're not creating content, friend.
That's absolutely. But you know, I think there's been quality to go along with it.
At least a little.
We've I think, you know, we've added new, if not words, then terms, jargon to the English language.
Yes.
The IMBAS, which technically is an acronym.
I'll give you full credit for that.
Oh, well, yeah, I suppose so. But we've got the IMBAS, which is technically an acronym. It must be a sequel.
Right.
We have legacy characters.
Sequel inversions.
Surrogates, which are characters like characters from the original movie, but played by different people with different names.
Mm-hmm.
The credit check, just technically more of a segment.
Right.
The credit check is something that does exist in the real world. It's more of a pun, really. Where I talk about the credits of a movie. But that's significant.
Yes.
You know, and more recently, new segments like To Catch a Stand-In and Mike's Memories.
What do I remember?
The quotable, of course. The
mm-hmm.
Starting and ending each show with a quote from the movie, which gives this podcast, I think, a quality not unlike that of HBO's The Wire. That's certainly what I was going for.
That's great. Yeah, I don't think any of that can be denied.
Yeah, and we've covered a lot of ground too.
We really have. It's
with regards to the amount of individual movies and also series complete series that we've covered in that time.
Mm-hmm. Not just that, but I also keep thinking about what would the Superman series and, say, the Jaws series sound like today after having done this for a year? Because those were our first two series. So,
you mean if we were to go?
Is the constant watching of sequels, does it change how you view those sequels now, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And interestingly, another podcast which deals predominantly with sequels, with Gawley and Rust, has just done a series of episodes on the Jaws movies. And, in terms of what they were saying about the sequels, we were overlapping a lot. But it also made me think that, maybe, I was being too harsh on particularly Jaws 2.
I agree.
And you were being too harsh on Jaws the Revenge.
I do recall saying at one point, look, this movie is a piece of shit.
Yes. And I think, there's a certain...
and I stand by it.
I stand by... I mean, I stand by a lot of...
But I think I said at the time that it has a certain amount of charm.
Yes. And that's what the line that they were pushing. But I think what's interesting in that regard is really, once you get to see the range of what's out there in the world of sequels,
mm-hmm.
your notions of quality and scale change dramatically. Both in terms of what's good and what's bad. And it's really that's what's really kind of changed for me over this past year. And
I think we were talking about this off mic just the other day on the Jaws subject, because I was saying, I think I listed them in order 2, 3, and 4 at that time, but I prefer 3 the most.
Right.
But what I was saying was that Jaws 2 is the most competently made movie.
Yes,
there's a real director behind Jaws 2.
Right, and I think that's how I would approach things differently, is to sort of...
I don't think Mr. Alves has directed anything since Jaws 3D, so...
Definitely not.
And it shows.
But
it's part of what makes it work.
Right, and, we both went in this trying, and the key word here is trying to judge every movie on its own merits.
Yes.
And... Not that I'm saying that it's still not hard to do, but I am saying that my approach has changed towards that now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning to be less comparative.
I think I've said on the podcast several times that I think you're very good at that and better at that than I am.
Well, I mean... It's I
get very upset when the quality between film 1 and film 4 drops so significantly.
Right. And that's what's interesting in returning to this movie, to me, is a reevaluation of what we originally said about the Superman movies and how much they declined. It's like, where does this movie change anything? Right. And I wanted to propose that we kind of look back at our rankings for the Superman movies.
I agree.
And see, because I wouldn't say this changes everything, but it's definitely a sharp reminder that everything in the world of sequels is completely relative to, in this context, whatever piece of shit comes next. Right?
Yes.
You thought you hated The Last Jedi. You ain't seen The Rise of Skywalker yet. And I guess that's the joy of sequels, is you have to revisit each movie after the next movie comes out, and it changes everything. Which is why I'm, to give you credit for something that you did with the format early on, which I think is a big part of why we've been so successful at what we've done, is to you insisted on having a good, that we, before we do a movie, we declare good or bad.
Yeah.
And then we rank.
Yeah.
And in the process of doing that, we're forced to take a lot of decisions that you could wiggle out of if you were just talking about them in a loosey-goosey kind of way.
Right. You must defend.
Yeah. But then you can occasionally go back and reevaluate that if something else comes up, and the Superverse is a great example.
We've done that in the middle of series. In the middle of Die Hard, I think I changed my ranking.
And you were listening back, you were somewhat swayed by my Batman and Robin arguments.
Yes.
On the basis of...
I will admit freely, and that's I think that's the perfect example of I was arguing at the time I couldn't get out of how I felt in 1997, which was when you watch Batman and Robin, you're so far removed from Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah.
That all I could think was, fuck you.
Yeah.
But you rightly, I will say rightly,
thank you,
said that on its own terms, Batman and Robin's not trying to be anything other than Batman and Robin.
Right.
And on those terms, I still don't like it, and it's still not good, but it's successful on its own terms.
The first iteration of that formula, which I've basically been arguing, I realize the whole time, is Superman 3.
Yeah, right.
And I think I've said
but I agree with you on that one.
One of the watch-alongs that
not enough to make it the highest on the list.
but to in looking at a whole series and trying to distinguish between two very good movies, I put the movie higher that seems to have a consistent vision, even if I think at times that vision is misguided. Mm-hmm. Severely misguided at times. But, I was thinking about this the other day. It's the difference between, a bad movie directed by a nobody and a bad movie directed by Ed Wood,
Right.
It's like, this guy's got a vision.
Right. Yeah,
for what he's doing. No competency, but he has a vision.
Which
he's the Florence Foster Jenkins of cinema.
Yeah, right, right.
It's like everyone loves it in spite of the lack of ability. And that question will definitely come up with the next series we're doing.
Oh yeah.
It comes down to that question of do you want a serviceable movie or do you want something that takes a big swing, which is
another phrase
another phrase, as well as another adapted phrase that I enjoy from you is "in the pocket." I use that a lot now. Which as I remember, you attributed to quote singing shows.
Yes,
which is also a phrase I enjoy. Because it's the quaintest way you could describe that, that culture machine that is the X Factor.
Singing shows.
The Voice. This cultural behemoth of capitalist repression. Singing shows.
All right. Well, let me just say that this past year and these past 100 episodes have been, just my greatest pleasure. I have so much fun watching these movies and talking about them with you. I just told you off mic that I was editing one of our episodes and laughing at ourselves while I was listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so proud of this podcast. I listen to it.
Me too.
It's in my weekly rotation of podcasts along with some of the best out there. And that's not to say that we belong there, but it's to say that, I'm a listener.
I enjoy it as much. Yeah.
And I'm proud of the work that you've put into it to bring us, to make us so legitimate as a podcast so early on, because you basically, and there's no reason why anyone would know this, you kind of taught yourself to become a sound editor. Essentially.
Yeah, that's why I first started listening to our podcasts.
It was more quality control.
And then I grew into becoming a fan.
Yeah, exactly. But there's Mike does all the editing. He does some amazing artwork for the show as well. I do stuff too.
Amazing bad artwork.
I do some stuff too, but
you work your ass off. You do all the YouTube. You're constantly posting for that and putting up the trailers for movies. I mean, come on, you're no slouch.
Yeah, and thank you.
You're
but
welcome.
I just wanted to, because I spend so much time telling you what a terrible person you are. I thought, I'd use this milestone to give you a compliment, because it is really quite remarkable. And I wanted to add with that, we don't often have guests on this show, but the guests that we have had so far are just the most amazing people within their industry, whether it's screenwriting or podcasting, and
that accounts for all too.
That accounts for all too. But I mean,
I mean, what a great time we've had, and I look forward to building more. Having more guests on.
Sure. Yeah, but I'm also happy this just being the two of us.
Oh yeah.
So if you're a podcaster and you're interested in joining us on the show, let us know. I mean, if you're good.
All right. Let's.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day, you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beers. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here on our 100th episode discussing Superman Returns. All right, Tom. Where do you want to go first? Do you want to re-rank?
Yeah, let's re-rank.
Let's talk about where this lies.
Yeah, let's do that.
Now, I remember that you went on our first series way back a year ago. I believe you went 3, 2, 4.
Yes.
I went in order 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Where does Superman Returns lie for you? And I think this is a really interesting discussion, by the way. I'll just say up front.
It is a really interesting discussion, namely because I guess for me the only question is
it goes to exactly what we were just talking about something like, what do you value more? This movie is at least mostly competently made.
I disagree with that.
I understand what you're saying. I know why you're saying that, but its biggest problems to me is not in the choices that its director, who frankly I don't even want to talk about.
Because he's a piece of shit away from the camera, or because he's a piece of shit behind the camera too in this instance.
That's true. Actually, it's both. But we'll just say it. This movie's directed. It's a 2006 movie, everyone. Superman Returns, directed by Bryan Singer, who we know from The Usual Suspects and the X-Men movies and Valkyrie, and he's got problems.
#Me Too.
Yeah, and #Me Too.
That should be his first credit everywhere.
So fuck that guy. But what I'm talking about is, say, the difference between like Jaws 2 and Jaws 3.
Well, the only question for me is this better or worse than Superman 4?
That's the question for me too.
And you know what I'm going to say is it's really close, because I think these two movies are fairly similar. There's a lot of bad ideas, some good ideas, all covered with bad execution. Like, the bad execution is like a frosting, so you can't even see which parts of the cake are cooked properly.
Now, be more specific. What are you talking about in execution? Are you talking about actors and acting choices, director and directing choices?
All of that. Yeah,
all of it. Okay. All right, fine.
There's a part. I've already mentioned what I like about this movie, which is Parker Posey. And I don't mind James Marsden. And that's pretty much it. But this is
It's funny you say that, because that's where I am too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, exactly.
Oh, good. But you know, I have
I
have a really complicated history with this movie. I saw it when it came out in the theater in 2006.
No surprise there.
No surprise there. If you've learned anything in 100 episodes, it's that aside from a movie that was unavailable to see at the theater, Mike will have seen it in the theater.
I'll tell you what is a surprise.
I bet you've even seen, like, Return to Jafar in the theater, like the one time they showed it there.
I haven't gone that far, I guess. This movie has 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that to me is offensive.
Well, I would have said that in 2006, because when I first saw this movie, I rather liked it.
Really?
Yes. And
I did not.
I learned that that's how everyone else felt later on. But for whatever reason, I think we have to remember that in 2006 there weren't a great deal of superhero movies.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we're absolutely saturated with them now. And in 2006, 2, maybe 3, if that, came out a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more.
You had the X-Men series.
Yeah.
And that's about
Batman and the Dark Knight.
Yeah, I guess the Dark Knight.
But it was a special event, and I think there was enough distance from me and the Christopher Reeve movies to actually appreciate the nostalgia that the movie has for that series of films.
Well, and that's the thing that's really interesting to me, is that I only think that it's the director's admiration for those movies that connects this as a sequel to the other movies.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can talk about that in more depth, but I mean, that's definitely the driving force here. But anyway, it was only until the movie Ted, the outro of the movie Ted, that I realized, which is a Patrick Stewart voiceover, in which I say Patrick Stewart, we know it's Seth MacFarlane, is letting loose on Superman Returns and what an awful movie it is, apropos of nothing. That I got the sense in the movie theater at the time, it's like, do other people not like this movie? And the only time I've seen it between then and now, between the theater and now, was a Spanish language version at my in-laws' house, where I was guessing all the dialogue, and they thought I knew Spanish a lot better than I did. So I conned them into thinking I knew more Spanish than I did, just because I could tell what they were saying, because it's a fucking Superman movie, and all the dialogue is pretty much taken from other Superman movies.
Were you already married at the time, or is this how you got permission?
I might have. Yeah, I think.
How much do you owe to Superman Returns?
Exactly. I don't remember. I wish I could. I think it might have been I think it might have been. It could have been a turning point.
That's funny.
But having watched this after a year in which I've seen all the Superman movies at least twice, I probably have more problems with this movie than anyone's even thought of before. Like, I get the sense that at some point people stopped looking for problems in this movie because they were so bored and they didn't want to have to watch it again.
Right.
And now I'm finding flaws with it that are based on it not living up to Quest for Peace, which is not an angle most people kind of...
Right. And that's where...
Here, right?
That is where I came out. I I mean, I think I made it clear how much I disliked The Quest for Peace.
Yes.
However, that movie is on a level in which from the beginning it's like kind of predictable as to how bad it will be.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah, as soon as the Canon logo comes up, you know what you're getting.
Right, exactly.
And the titles, which, as we said at the time,
the fucked up titles
make no geometrical sense.
Make no sense. You think, what is going on here? And then when you see John Cryer, you're like, okay, I know exactly what this movie is going to be. There's never a time in Superman Returns you're constantly just hoping for this movie to get better.
Yeah.
That's what I remember when I first saw it. And I remember going into like when you see credits, the opening, speaking of credits, when you see the credits open up and they're so very similar to the original credits and you've got the original score going and I'm rawing. I mean, I am ready for that movie when that movie opens.
Yeah.
And so the journey that I go on with that movie is so much more aggravating.
Yeah.
That for me, it's at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, that's what I went with too, eventually. Like I said, I think...
And that is saying something.
I think they have a lot of the same problems. Do you know what it came down to in the end for me? No, it came down to... If I had to sit down and watch one of these two movies now, what would I pick? And I just went, yeah, Quest for Peace. I would pick, Christopher Reeve over Diet Christopher Reeve any day.
Exactly. Right.
And that's not really on the movie.
And I'll take Gene Hackman
100%
of the time. Even when he's not looking at other actors and couldn't care less and is phoning it in the worst way possible. I will still take him.
I said exactly the same things in my notes. I said that even when Gene Hackman is dressed as Run DMC,
right,
and his later character from Crimson Tide, it never feels cartoonish in the way that it does when Kevin Spacey puts on a typical Southern guy disguise.
And that's an overall note for this entire movie. For how it's directed, for Kevin Spacey, for Brandon Routh, for Kate Bosworth. Remember when I said that Val Kilmer was playing the idea of Bruce Wayne? They're all doing the same thing.
It's like whenever... Yes, I mean, they are... Certainly with Brandon Routh... maybe not the other two so much. Brandon Routh is doing an impersonation of Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
That is all form and no content.
Yes.
And he's clearly been directed to do that. So I don't want to lay this at his door because
that was one of my other biggest takeaways was Bryan Singer was missing the mark. For somebody who clearly revered the old movies, he could not create the magic that Richard Donner did.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Richard Donner, because another revelation that I had watching the movie this time was how closely it was bound together with a movie that came out the same year, which is the Superman 2 Richard Donner cut.
Right.
I didn't realize that these two movies were two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
Because firstly, for those of you who don't know, for Superman Returns to be made, they had to clear legally a lot of the unused footage from Superman 2, and those clearances allowed a Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, which the theatrical version was
Lester.
Was sort of Richard Lester, even though Richard Donner had still directed the majority of it.
Yeah.
And really, I think that's the missing piece here is you have to know the agenda of this movie is about reestablishing Richard Donner as the author of the Superman movies. because that's the only way in which certain decisions regarding timeline,
Marlon
storytelling,
Brando.
execution make any sense.
Right.
But certainly in terms of what you're seeing on screen, nothing's adding up as to why you would go down this particular route. And I think that is to me, that's the revelation this time. It's like, oh, they came out in the same year, they couldn't exist without each other. They're both made for essentially the same purpose.
Yeah.
To reestablish Richard Donner as the author,
true
of
author
Superman.
of Superman, right?
And to erase Richard Lester and all subsequent Superman that had no Donner involvement from history.
And that's one of the notes that I remember reading was the director had decided that this was more of a direct follow-up to Superman 2.
Well, let's talk about
and ignores 3 and 4.
Let's talk about that, because I've got a lot to say about that. But first off, especially given that we've both decided this is a worse movie than Superman 4, that's a big problem.
Right.
Because firstly, it seems that the only reason that this is a direct sequel to Superman 2 is because his mother is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is killed off screen in Superman 3.
Right.
When he goes back to Smallville, his mother's dead. Now, I would be invested in that if Martha Kent played any role in this movie.
Right. She can't even get
like
into the hospital room at the end.
I like the idea that, oh, this is a way, bringing her back to life is to explore a relationship that we've seen very little of. I mean, even compared to, his Earth father, we've not seen their relationship.
Right.
But she's literally in this movie for a scene and a cameo.
Yeah.
And most of it is about his relationship with Marlon Brando's Jor-El. So it's not even about mothers and sons. It's a movie about fathers and sons that changes its own timeline in order to bring back a character that it does nothing with. Which is why I think that is a smokescreen for we want to get 3 and 4 out of canon for reasons other than the story.
Yeah.
Because why else would you erase those movies?
Why else would you erase? Yeah, exactly.
And to be fair, the goal to erase, Superman 4 and then to take dialogue, scenes, and themes from that movie. I mean, Bryan Singer's balls get him into a lot of trouble, but here I think they get him into trouble too, because that is
personally and professionally.
Yeah. Also, if you decide you want to steal from the Quest for Peace, maybe you need to aim a little higher with your material.
Well, be more specific. So for those that maybe can't,
those who don't want to sit down and watch Quest for Peace.
Yeah, like what themes, what things is Bryan Singer stealing?
In terms of dialogue, when he saves a plane / space shuttle, which now exists in our own reality, as piloted by Richard Branson.
Always saving planes. Like in every...
Piloted by Richard Branson, and fun fact, I watched this movie on the same day that Richard Branson returned from a real-life private space flight.
Wow.
So, that may be one of the few things that this movie got on point. He comes down, and the dialogue he says about the safety of this vehicle is lifted from Quest for Peace, and I'm sure that comes from like a 1930s Superman as well, but it's in Quest for Peace got there first. The idea of
he even talks about, because is it Superman 2 when she's in the helicopter? Doesn't he have that line in that movie too?
Yeah,
about air travel.
Yeah, and the whole idea of him going back to the homestead.
Yeah.
That's something we saw in Superman 4. him rediscovering the crystal in the barn. That's all there too. The whole theme of, like, you know, world peace and can we trust Superman? Superman's gone. That all happens in Quest for Peace as well.
Right.
So it's a movie that is kind of hinges on its faith in the Superman movies, but it's cutting out most of the history of that in order to do it.
Right.
And I find that objectionable.
Understood. All right. Let's take a virus. Have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the 2006 film Superman Returns. I didn't mention this, Tom. This movie, known as a flop, was successful. I'm most baffled by the idea that they gave him $200 million for a budget. That's just ridiculous to me. But it had an opening weekend of 52.5, made $200 million in the USA, so it made its money back, but $391 million worldwide. But none of that was enough to bring everybody back for another turn.
Well, here's a question. Was this meant to be a one-off all along?
No.
You know that for sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
then why have the kid? Anyway, is that kid going to grow up in the next movie? What were they going to do with that?
That's what I mean. Well, that's what I want to talk about next. This movie writes itself into so many corners. It's astounding to me.
Yes.
I have so many notes because there was a version of this movie that J.J. Abrams had written.
That doesn't surprise me.
Was like
speaking of writing yourself into a corner.
Right. So he had written something that I guess completely ignored canon completely, and Bryan Singer dismissed it and started over because of what he wanted to do. And then you have this weird hodgepodge of a movie that's trying to stay connected to Superman 1 and 2, disregard Superman 3 and 4.
Yes.
Whilst all the while simultaneously making choices for characters that seem out of character for the canon. I mean, it's
yeah.
You know.
You have put it better than I have ever heard anyone say it.
Thank you.
But what you say makes no sense.
No.
That is exactly what this movie is.
Lex Luthor is the greatest criminal mastermind known to mankind, so I don't know why he has to marry an old woman for money.
And also, yeah, but you're absolutely right when you say in the name of canon, because it's sort of like, oh, well, this will cause a continuity problem if we don't segue from the end of Superman 2, where actually he's never seen being put in prison, so you got that wrong, Bryan Singer.
Right.
Maybe if you'd have started this from the end of Superman 4, it would have solved a lot of problems. Yeah, absolutely. The biggest one for me, in terms of it's minor because he's a more minor character, at least in this movie, is Jimmy Olsen is represented as being unable to figure out how to take a photograph. Remember, his job as a photographer, and yet he's the one who figures out the secret plot of Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
So as soon as you said people making decisions
Lex Luthor's
out of character,
secret plot is the same plot from the first Superman, just on a different coast, and instead of destroying part of the coast, he's building a new coast.
But then I think that's exactly what you're talking about this confused approach to canon, this idea that, again, rebooting continuity. Those two things cannot exist together.
He has the same exact plan.
Yeah,
realistic.
But they're thinking it's character consistency because, we know he's into land scams.
Exactly.
So this is the ultimate land scam, is to make a planet full of a planet made of kryptonite.
Right.
Everything about that makes sense except the decision they come to. It's like someone because
I know what I'll do. I'll destroy all the good land in America and create a barren land of kryptonite.
But this, I mean, they build up to this through a trope that I've seen in the Star Trek TV series, and to an extent the movies, where they take a difficult, complex scientific idea and boil it down to something relatable, hence the sea monkeys line.
Right.
But sea monkeys is even dumber than the parodic version of it in Futurama, where Bender says, like taking air out of a balloon.
Well, let me discuss my biggest problem with this movie.
Oh my god. That's not even your biggest problem with this movie.
My biggest problem with this movie is that child.
Okay, it's not mine.
Well, it should be.
I don't like that he's asthmatic and that holds him back from achieving his superhero status.
Right. So
fuck you, anyone who's disabled in the audience.
Exactly. Eat a dick. Weakness. So, what this means, because, all right, within the guise of this film, by the way, a lot of this film takes place at the Daily Planet, which is supposed to be filled with professional fucking reporters. Superman's been gone about 5 years. So
is that how long it's been?
I think so.
And now everyone's younger than they were when he left?
Yeah, exactly. And so has Clark Kent. Just saying.
For the exact same period of time.
Exact same period of time. Bit of a big clue. So he comes back to work at the Daily Planet with his luggage so that we can see that he's clumsy.
It's like if they asked a child to make a movie. Right?
Exactly.
Well, we got to see his luggage. How else would he know he arrived?
All right. But as we know, as we discover because he throws pianos, the child of Lois Lane is Superman's child. Yet Lois Lane does not know that Clark Kent is Superman.
Mm-hmm.
That means that Superman put his super penis in her vagina and then had a kid without ever revealing to her that he's Clark Kent. Meaning he kept a part of himself completely away from her. I mean,
maybe he just date-raped kissed her before he left.
I was just going to say, like, unless he date-raped kissed her, that, you know, this shall not stand. That's how you know this movie was made by a fucking predator.
I have exactly the same notes here. I put a note when Clark Kent was skulking around Lois Lane's desk looking for, like, mementos. I don't know. I don't know what goes on in Bryan Singer's mind. I thought, it's interesting that they've doubled down on the kind of romantic creepiness of the Clark Kent character, you know, the date, as we said, the date rape kiss.
Yeah.
And then my next note was, well, that's hardly likely to recede in a movie directed by Bryan Singer that also stars Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so interesting to me when it comes to Lex Luthor, we never had this dimension of Luthor as a sexual manipulator before.
Uh-huh.
But it's the first thing we see.
Right.
Is him sexually manipulating an elderly woman.
An elderly woman.
Boy,
that's
this
minute
movie
one.
has problems.
That's minute one of this movie.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, this movie obviously thinks it's superior to whatever Richard Lester did with the series.
Clearly.
But I don't think Richard Lester ever stooped so low, even for a gag, which we know he ends every scene with.
Yeah.
And begins every scene with, and there's a few in the middle. Of a dog literally eating another dog.
Yeah, exactly.
And then calling back to that at the end of the
movie. Right.
The unifying theme of this movie is eating dogs.
Is eat
it's a
whatever's
Superman
there
movie.
When you're hungry.
You know,
but just to me, the idea
Superman 3 is not about Superman, but it ain't about eating dogs.
Right. And
it's about
what's
sucks.
So like I just find it offensive that there's no relationship common sense.
Oh. You're right.
The idea that Superman, who stands for truth, justice, and all that other stuff, as Perry White would have said.
Does he say that in this movie?
Yeah.
Well, Frank Langella just checked out, didn't he?
No, not really. He was asked to check out by Bryan Singer. And
was he asked to become a horrible misogynist as well?
No.
I bet he was.
No, he probably was. That was just Bryan Singer's blind spot. But they did not want him to be cantankerous. Because they did not want him compared to J.K. Simmons from the Spider-Man movies.
This is making me angry.
Right? Anyway,
if we're talking about
the idea that this
if we're talking about Avengers, I'm ready to Hulk out.
Well, just to me, the idea that you take the thing that works so great in the first two Superman movies is Clark Kent is falling in love with Lois Lane.
Yeah, she acts like they once like brushed past each other at a office party.
They barely know each other in this movie.
They went to in this timeline
that Superman
they went to
would not tell her who he is. You know? And then,
none of it makes sense.
Oh, I mean, it's just it's fucked up and gross.
I was going to say that they've been to Niagara Falls together, and then I was going to say, he saved her life. And then I was like, he kind of saved her life.
Yeah.
He did the bare minimum to save her life. But that's sort of, I don't know where anyone's getting that this comes after the end of Superman 2, because this makes way more sense if it just comes straight after Superman the movie. It's a real direct sequel in that sense. Because they cover so much of the same ground in Superman 2.
Right.
Not least that Lex Luthor seems as if he's never been to the Fortress of Solitude before.
She even says...
Kitty?
Kitty. She says, it seems like you've been here before. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, this movie wants to have its canon cake and eat it.
And eat it too, right.
And then at some point it becomes a Christian movie.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm not saying that there's Christian allegory in this movie. I'm saying that this is a Christian movie in the same way Passion of the Christ is a Christian movie. There's a crucifixion scene. There's a sort of Christ being, crown of thorns scene. I suppose you would call that pre-crucifixion. I don't know what the ecclesiastical term is. Then you have him ascending to the sun. Lex Luthor does the Jesus pose. And then he falls from space like a religious painting.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about that last hour of the movie. That's what happens. Basically, it's
and it takes so long.
Well, like, yeah, it's that kind of, it's the pace of a kind of like a Christian, like a crucifixion movie.
Even the airplane set piece at the beginning. I mean, that thing's like 15 minutes long.
I have a theory about that. I think in 2006, for whatever reason, they think their effects are way better than they are.
Oh, I was just going to bring that up. Yes, you're completely right about that, because that's one of my biggest notes, is that this movie thinks it looks better than it does, and the effects can't do what they want it to do.
And some of that is taste-based, I think. Like, a lot of that is just, it looks shit. But some of it is... I mean, I made a facetious reference to his spasmodic flying, but if you compare that to the fluid, elegant, graceful wire work of the first, at least the first 3 movies, it's not just about the quality of effects. It's it's like, yeah, you can digitally render it, but it's a moving away from, and we even talked about it when we did the Supergirl watch along. I was just in awe of that sequence where she's just flying around, no one is watching her, she's just enjoying the landscape. And here it feels so, whenever he flies, it feels like so stop and start, and he jolts everywhere. It's not nice to look at. And I think at the very least, him flying should be nice to look at. I mean, maybe that's just me, but it shouldn't feel painful.
Right.
It shouldn't, like, give you a cramp to look at him fly.
Yeah. My note here is that this movie is CGI sloppy.
That sounds like a really bad police procedural.
Yeah.
CGI, sloppy. Although I'd actually quite like to... I guess that's Brooklyn Nine-Nine, essentially.
Right. I also say that this, we're 53 minutes in, and it's just breakup angst. That's all this movie is. Yeah. I have a note here that says we're an hour and 30 minutes in until we finally know what Lex Luthor's goddamn plan is. Followed by an hour of him trying to do the plan.
Yeah. The other thing about just before we leave the plane, the plane sequence, a couple of things I observed there. Just, because this is 100th episode, so we can't go without a Bond reference.
No, of course not.
I thought there was a very Moonraker-y quality to this sequence. And also, to go back to a movie that we've previously done, just the idea of having a space shuttle on top of a plane, to me, that's pure Moonraker. Also, Airplane 2, the idea of, like, erasing the distinctions between flight and space travel.
Right.
Yeah, so just wanted to oh yes, and the other, and in reference to the canon, the thing this most reminded me of from a Superman movie was the video game that Ross Webster plays in the supercomputer.
Right.
When he was lifting the shuttle off the plane.
Right.
That angle looked just like that video game for a second.
Right, yeah.
And I guess once, you get into that Venn diagram when you have poor CGI meets early 80s video game graphics, you're right in the pocket there.
In the pocket, baby. Yeah, this movie, I wrote down, this movie just plods along with almost nothing happening.
It's horrible. I think that plane the plane rescue sequence was when, and this is never a good thing to think in the middle of a movie. It's like, I already know where that extra half hour is coming from.
Right.
Because this is like half an hour longer than most Superman movies.
Yeah.
Apart from the first one, I think. Which is about the same length. Pre-Snyder, obviously. It goes without saying.
Goes without saying.
But like that, you should even if a movie's overlong, you should still be thinking what's left. You shouldn't be thinking, well, they've already wasted my time, so
yeah,
of course this is going to be half an hour too long.
To you by the Sounds in Cinema podcast. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
stay on target
and check out the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
stay on target.
That's the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we're back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the 2006 official sequel, Superman Returns.
The way you said official sounded like a burn. There was so much judgment in that official.
You want to talk about judgment? I also have this note. I said early on, Superman's day drinking again like Superman 3, except this time it's Clark Kent and he's drinking Budweiser. This movie is the Budweiser of sequels.
Yes. 100%.
I fucking hate this movie so much.
Yeah. It I don't know if is this a movie that gets worse on repeat viewings? And most people weren't like me and liked it in the first place, but
yeah. But I think it's funny to me that, I mean, maybe to your point that there weren't a lot of superhero movies at the time, but it did make $200 million. It has 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. But this movie is remembered as a dud.
Mm-hmm.
As a piece of shit. I think that's how it's remembered.
Yeah, I agree. None of that adds up.
Right.
None of
exactly. Right.
Even the statistics don't add up here. And I'm trying to think of reasons why it could ever get to 75%, and the first thing's popping into my mind is the return of Marlon Brando as Jor-El. I mean, that's got to have. But again, just watch the Richard Donner cut if that's what you're into,
right?
Because you get a decent Superman movie attached to it.
I noticed. I also wrote down at some point. I said Lois Lane given nothing to do.
I mean, you could put a wig on a lamp and it would make no difference.
Right.
Sorry, Kate Bosworth. And I generally don't like Kate Bosworth, but I'm not going to lay too much blame at her door for this.
No, I don't. I think I lay almost all blame with Bryan Singer. I think Brandon Ruth is doing what he's asked to do.
Right. So, I mean, it's curious what he's trying to get his actors to do.
I do blame Kevin Spacey.
I do blame Kevin Spacey because he's complicit in making Lex Luthor devoid of charm.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's playing all the nastiness and none of the charm.
And none of the charm.
He's playing one dimension of that character.
I am reminded of
history has shown why.
Yeah, I can't remember if we talked about this before, but I'm reminded of Alec Baldwin had a one-on-one talk show, short-lived, that I think it lasted only a couple episodes. But Jerry,
because he whenever he gets to success, he punches someone.
He punches someone.
That's how he celebrates.
Or berates
he breaks
his
the
daughter.
Law, gets cancelled.
he had Jerry Seinfeld on, and of course we know they're good friends, and he's been on the Comedians in Cars several times. But this is right when Me Too started, and they talked so earnestly about what was happening at the time, and I think Jerry Seinfeld asked him, he's like, do you know Kevin Spacey well? And he said, I mean, I know him. Yeah, certainly we've been to lots of functions. And there was always kind of a sense that when you're talking to Kevin, he's not really talking with you. He's scanning the room for someone else to talk to. He can really kind of smell himself.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's how he comes across as an actor. That
description is exactly his performance.
Yeah. I cannot believe he stooped so low to do that toothbrush gag. Again, something even Richard Lester was too on the nose.
Right.
Let's cut that. Let's do another comic button on the scene.
Did you also think, by the way, Lois Lane takes her child to an investigation, so worst parent.
Well, that is something that's consistent with the other Superman movies. Her reckless disregard for human life
that's true.
Has continued into motherhood.
Yeah. She undoes
because she takes the kid with her to the dangerous
seatbelt
place
in the attempt to try to help somebody else during the airplane crash.
Yeah,
and finds herself knocked around the air cabin so much that she would have broken her neck and be dead. But she takes her child there, and they get caught, and this yacht is going to the scene of the crime.
Conveniently.
When Kevin Spacey leaves the room with all the henchmen but one, was that not oddly violent when he starts throwing her around the room?
Absolutely.
I mean, it just looked so out of place.
Well, I mean, not that you never realize this, but you realize the job that Hackman is doing when you see other people try to play Lex Luthor.
Yeah, right.
Because it's if you don't get the balance just right between his charming side and his kind of more
maniacal
traditionally
side.
Villainous side,
right.
His violent side, it just it's just associate. It's just his character from Seven or Usual Suspects. It's like.
Right.
And I'm sure we've said that before, but it is, I do at least expect the actor playing Lex Luthor to try to live up to some part of Gene Hackman's legacy. And,
right. Here's a good.
I mean, maybe that was another instruction: was like, just don't take any lessons from Gene Hackman. Do your own thing. You won an Oscar.
Right.
People seem to like you. They haven't found out all the stuff you've done yet. Run with this.
Let me ask you this important question. You have to pick one, Lex Luthor. Do you prefer Kevin Spacey or Jesse Eisenberg?
You know what? For one, I don't know why I thought you would be this nice, but I really thought you were going to ask me to choose between Hackman and I don't know why. I mean, yeah, it's got to be Eisenberg.
Yeah, I think you might be right, but that's saying something, man.
Well, in line with I also think, you're absolutely right to say that his violence and his sociopathy is just so adult, and I think again that comes back to he's the Jewish characters in Passion of the Christ, right? He's the you have to make that because Brandon Routh's Superman is Jesus and he has to suffer. You have to have the absolute worst antagonist. And he even looks like the devil, Mel Gibson's devil from that movie, who was also like bald and smooth.
Yeah, right.
So I wonder whether Bryan Singer's looking at you trying to peel off some of that Passion of the Christ money.
Actually, it's funny you say that because Jim Caviezel lobbied pretty hard to be Superman. And the biggest reason he didn't get it was because of Passion of the Christ. Like Singer didn't.
I would say that is a reason to cast him for this movie.
Right. Well, Singer thought he was too famous because of that movie to be in this movie. He wanted more of an unknown. He wanted to do a Christopher Reeve thing that they did for the original Superman.
Well, he wanted a mannequin to dress up like Christopher Reeve.
Right.
That's what he means by unknown. He wants to do cosplay with Brandon Routh.
And Brandon Routh has brown eyes, so they had to give him blue contacts, and
which gives him this weird kind of Robert De Niro and Irishman cat's eye.
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
It's very strange. Well, we've been going pretty hard on this movie.
Yes.
Is there anything you like about this movie?
Like you, I like Parker Posey. And
she's so good. I mean, she is great.
Yeah. If James Marsden had a more important role, that's
exactly what I think.
Yeah. James Marsden, I've talked about this on the How Dare You podcast with movies around this time where you have two competing men essentially for one woman, but they're not trying to make either one a bad man.
I like that.
I'm okay with that, but
I like that a lot.
That
it's
also,
one of the saving graces of this movie for me.
But that also means that there's not as much tension. If at the very least they had made more out of, you're in love with a man, you think he's dead, you fall in love with another man, and now the first man comes back. That's an actual real dilemma for somebody.
Yeah, if that man is not Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Who you're gonna be like.
You know, it just occurs to me that, you know, we basically had that same exact storyline for Castaway, and that movie resolves it in 10 minutes, and this movie has it last for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, what I appreciated, I actually think James Marsden's perfectly good in this movie.
He is.
In spite of everything that's going on around him. And I like the character. I like the fact that he is represented wholly positively. I would have liked him to have emerged as the hero of the movie, and it be a way for human beings to learn that actually we can look after ourselves, you know,
right.
with good humans. Because so far as we've talked about, so far in the Superman movies, every single human being is a piece of shit.
Right.
And in this movie,
he's not a piece of shit. I do like that. You're right about that.
Led by James Marsden, it seems that human beings can look after themselves.
But it's like, even when Superman...
He does more saving than Superman in this movie.
Yeah.
And I like that, but I wish he'd emerged as the hero and that Lois would have decided to stay with him.
I do have a note here that says... Somebody says... well, I guess it's when they find out that the location of Lois, when she sends the fax.
Yeah.
Fax is played
yeah, the first and last time a fax-based rescue plan has appeared in a movie.
But he says, tell Perry I'm taking the seaplane.
Uh-huh.
I don't understand. Does the paper have a seaplane? Is that
they just wanted him
the
basically they wanted him to fly, so again, and I think that's the movie, aside from the clunkiness of that's a good move, because it's like, well,
no, yeah.
If I can fly a plane and save people, and you're all vulnerable because the world is now mainly kryptonite, am I kind of the hero of this movie?
Right.
And I like that, and then they back away from it, but I
like the fact
that...
They back away from it so much that it's Kate Bosworth's Lois Lane that dives to the depths of the ocean to go get Superman while he just sits on the top of the seaplane, hoping his wife doesn't drown.
I like that they never, he just steps aside at the end, which is consistent with his character, and it also keeps human beings in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, he's just an all-round good guy who is in every conceivable way better than both Superman and Clark Kent, who in this movie is a selfish prick.
Yeah.
Both iterations.
Yeah.
It begins with him going to space to get some debris. For what? For his collection? What? I mean, what, like... if there's one thing I know about Krypton, Supergirl aside, it's that it blew up.
Right.
And this movie I mean, we laughed when we did the Supergirl movie about, they couldn't get Christopher Reeve to be in the movie, so he has to go off on a space-based peace mission.
This is the mission. I think that's what...
You think that's the same mission?
Yes, I do.
Sadly, I think Martha has already died in that timeline, so...
Oh, all right.
I don't think it counts. I would love it if that debris he brings back from blown up Krypton contained inner space where Supergirl and Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
But also what's kind of interesting is, like, I don't think they're going from... Well, I don't know. This movie confuses me because when he is stalking Lois Lane, like he's hovering outside her house,
right,
in the sky, they have this ominous music like you would have for a serial killer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so is everyone just... Does Bryan Singer not know that stalking is not
okay?
Not a heroic trait?
Yeah, right.
And that's what I came down to in the end. It's like, well, everything we've learned about him and Kevin Spacey since shows me that
he's got a broken moral compass.
Yeah, they're bringing their light. They're bringing what they know about the world to these characters.
Yeah.
We didn't get very far in things that we liked, did we?
No, we did not.
No, so Parker Posey. It's difficult for people to remember, but I remember when she was the queen of American independent cinema.
Oh yeah, of course.
In the mid-90s, she did a bunch of a cluster of movies that were like, the epitomes of American independent cinema. She's in, I think, pretty much all the Christopher Guest movies.
Yeah.
Christopher Guest mockumentaries.
Movies.
And she's like, I call her Pathos Posey because she's Christopher Guest's pathos person. Like, you want to bring pathos into a mockumentary movie, she does it all.
Yeah.
And she's brilliant. And here she's been given a surrogate role, to go back to our terminology, because she's not Eve, she's Kitty,
right,
who I assume is an original comic book character, and I don't want to even look up if she's not, because if she's not, there is no excuse for this being the same character.
She is this movie's Miss Tessmacher.
Right, who has exactly the same character arc.
Right.
But it shows like how good she is in this movie versus how terrible everyone and everything else is. That when she's flying with Superman, I thought, why the fuck did they not cast Parker Posey as Lois Lane?
As Lois Lane, right. Exactly, I had the same thought.
And it looks right. When she's flying with him, I'm like, this looks right.
Yeah.
And she can act. And she's competent. And... She knows how to play a limited character. She kind of looks
like Margot Kidder. I mean...
Yeah, she knows how to play a limited character. Yeah. I also... the other thing that confused me about that, because that's classic rebooting continuity, having a new character who plays exactly the same role as a previous character with a different name played by a different actor. But they don't even try to recast Otis.
No, yeah.
And, I certainly think...
Cal Penn, not Otis.
I certainly think that, anything Ned Beatty had done is sacrosanct and shouldn't be messed with. I believe that. But I also believe that about Gene Hackman. So what's so special about Otis? That he doesn't get a surrogate in this movie.
Yeah.
Except, Cal Penn is the closest. But
Cal Penn was supposed to have a bigger role. He was supposed to be... he was supposed to be a reporter that... tricked Superman into going to his home planet.
Well, that sounds great.
So he, yeah, right?
That sounds like a movie I'd want to watch.
So yeah, that was how, because you have that whole sort of nonsense storyline about Superman not showing up for Lex Luthor's parole hearing, I believe it was.
Well, that's another thing they stole from Superman 3, this idea that, the Metropolis local government is the reason that any crime happens.
Yeah.
They released unemployment released Gus Gorman upon an unsuspecting world, and now the courts have sent Lex Luthor back into decent society.
God. All right, I don't have anything else to say about this movie. Other than what a fucking disappointment.
Yeah. And well, we talked about how the whole Superman is dead, putting Superman, make Superman being critically injured is lifted from Quest for Peace. But also, I'm not sure there's any logic putting Superman in a hospital bed.
Right.
Would those doctors know how to treat him?
They show us, obviously, that they don't. They try to put IVs into him and the needles bend and break. I can't believe they were able to so easily get his outfit off. I thought they would try to cut it and wouldn't be able to.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I'm just recalling, one of the things I liked about this movie when it first came out was the through line of fathers and sons, and the way that one of the reasons I don't completely hate the child storyline. What you say is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
It's problematic. It's a huge corner for the writing.
Yeah. But
I liked that's why I liked the idea, because I thought this movie is about fathers and sons.
Okay.
Like from the very beginning, one of the first things we hear in with 3 different types of recapping at the top of the movie.
Yeah, right.
It's like, little boy penis, eat your heart out. That it was at least thematically consonant, despite how problematic it is as a piece of writing. And something about the reason I asked, did you think this was meant to be a one-off, is because that's the only way I make sense of Superman's last line, where he says, "I'm always around."
Always around.
It's the most equivocal thing you could possibly say. It's like, there might not be another movie,
right?
But Superman as an idea is still here.
I took it more as, I'll be watching you from outside your building like a fucking creep.
That's exactly what it is. I forgot this movie was directed by a sex predator for that moment. Of course. You've solved that problem.
Let's finish it there. For Tom,
Can I do a brief credit check?
All right, quickly.
Very, very brief. The people demand it. Christopher and Dana Reeve. Yeah, I'll do fast. Christopher and Dana Reeve get a dedication.
Yeah.
To smooth things over with his estate for stealing his performance. The closing credits are done in a plain fashion, which is bizarre.
Yes.
Why recreate the titles, not the credits? I didn't know you had to acknowledge Clark's third law when you only use it in dialogue. And funny, the movie was shot in Australia, since Lex Luthor tries to become the ruler of Australia in Superman 2. That's all I have.
All right. I noted that about Australia, and there was always something off about the movie, and it's because they built a fucking farm in the barren landscape of Australia somewhere.
Don't tell me they made Eva Marie Saint go to Australia on top of not using her in the movie.
They did.
Fucking hell.
So, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Superman Returns, our 100th episode. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, I am Michael Shantz. I'm from the How Dare You Awards.